The hard part of parenting is that kids aren't vending machines. What I mean by that is that you can't just input a certain parenting strategy and out tumbles the kid you ordered. They actually are little people with their own personalities. I learned that pretty early on with my first child, Jackson. He was so stubborn. I remember the school had sent home a list of what kids needed to know before kindergarten, and I started to try to teach him his numbers so he'd be ready. He just didn't like it at all. He argued with me. Why does 8 have to come after 7? Why can't it come after 2? Finally, I gave up. In Indiana, where we lived at the time, you had to go to a kindergarten registration day about 6 months before school started, and I was so embarrassed that I hadn't done a good job of teaching him. When they asked if he could count, I started to shake my head, but he took a piece of paper, confidently grabbed a pencil, and in shaky, large letters, he wrote down all his numbers, 1 through 20. Then he proceeded to write down all his letters and his own name. I should have been proud, but instead I felt shocked and frustrated with him. Where did he learn all this stuff? And why would he write it down at school but not for me? I guess that's one reason why I chose to send my kids to school instead of homeschooling. It would have been a disaster with Jackson. Hello, I'm your host, Miriam Brown. In addition to my teaching certificate, I have a bachelor's degree in psychology and a master's in curriculum and instruction. I spent the last decade as a public school teacher, and I want to give you insider tips on how to help your child do well in a system that might otherwise fail them. Today, I'll talk about the 4th step of learning numbers, writing them, and I have a surprise for you. In the previous episodes, we've talked about ways to help your child learn to say the numbers in order. We've learned games and habits that will help them understand that those number words indicate an amount of something. And then we've talked about things you can do to help them recognize numerals when they see them on signs and in books. The next step is learning to write the numbers down. My surprise is that I'm giving you a break this week. I'm not going to suggest any ways to help you do this with your preschooler because you don't have to. Maybe I'll talk about it in the next season when I start focusing on kindergarten standards, but for now I want to help you prepare your child to start school, and frankly, it's not developmentally appropriate to expect young children to be able to write properly. I want you to try an experiment for me. Get out a pencil and a piece of paper. Hold the pencil in your non-dominant hand, the one that you don't usually use, and write all your numbers from 1 to 20. You're probably totally able to do it, because you know in your mind what those numerals are supposed to look like. But unless you've practiced, your numerals probably look a lot like Jackson's did at kindergarten registration. Handwriting involves what is called fine motor skills, and these skills are independent of your ability to understand or picture what those numbers look like. It isn't until they're about 5 that most kids' brains develop the fine motor skills they need to master handwriting. If you've spent years helping your kids understand numbers, they'll be able to learn to write them during kindergarten. Schools tend to focus on reading and writing when they teach numbers. They do a pretty good job of it. And besides, your kid might be kind of bored if they have nothing at all to learn. So why waste your precious time at home teaching them handwriting, which involves a lot of repetitive practice and worksheets? On the other hand, schools don't spend nearly enough time helping your child understand the quantities and amounts that connect the numbers to real life. I often hear educators talk about kids who struggle in math not having number sense. Number sense just refers to understanding what the numbers really mean outside of math class. This is because number sense develops slowly over time, and they simply don't spend enough time on it in school. So spend time talking to your kids about numbers and playing games that help them think about quantities. Leave the writing for the school to teach. If you try to take it all on yourself, you're going to get overwhelmed, especially if, like most families, you're balancing a lot of different responsibilities. I want my listeners to hear from someone who is trying to juggle it all. Yogi and Javi were told to play quietly in his room while we were recording, but you can hear them yelling in the background, so I apologize. I don't have a sound studio, so you get real life. Okay, so this is my friend Elizabeth. She's June and Javi's mom, and she's actually the one who got me started doing this podcast. Elizabeth, can you tell me a little bit about why you wanted me to start sharing some of my ideas?
Yeah, we just needed help with learning how to do everyday learning and to incorporate it into our lives because we felt lost, like we weren't getting any sort of help at the school and didn't know what to do. And we had tried workbooks and nothing was really working for us or helpful.
So what was it that made you feel like that you needed more than what the school was offering?
Well, the school's idea was just to read 30 minutes a night, which is probably still a good idea to do, but it doesn't actually help with anything else, I feel like, in school. We struggled with numbers and math, and then also just all the other school stuff, because reading maybe helps with some vocabulary and that, but it didn't seem to help with anything else.
We had a texting conversation the other day, and you were feeling a little bit frustrated. So can you tell us a little bit about that?
Oh, yeah, I was. I feel like me and my husband both work full-time jobs, and luckily I'm able to work from home, so it's a little bit easier now. But most of my friends who also work full-time jobs with both parents working, you get off work at 5, and then you get home by about 5:30, and then you start cooking dinner, and you clean up dinner, and then it's like 7 o'clock. And all of a sudden, it's time to start getting ready for bed by like 7:30, maybe 8 o'clock at night. And by the time you get everything done, there's no time to do anything. And if you have to go to the grocery store or do any errands, when are you supposed to do homework, or how are you supposed to help your kids, or when do you have time to read to them? And if you have two kids that are two different ages and they're not doing the same thing, it's hard to do, the bedtime reading or any sort of thing. You have to do it separate, so it's hard to do it when you just don't have time.
There is so much required of parents. I remember when Jackson was a newborn thinking, how do so many people survive to adulthood? It's so much work just feeding and changing and bathing your kids. You would think more people would just give up and quit. But day in and day out, parents are doing so much work just to keep their kids alive. It's mind-boggling, really. Anyway, my hope with this podcast is to teach easy things that you can fit into your daily childcare routine that are age appropriate. But I don't want anyone to feel ashamed or overwhelmed by teaching your kid. Well, you're probably going to feel overwhelmed because parenting is really messy. On Pinterest, things look so easy and cute, but at my house, things don't always turn out so picture perfect. Elizabeth says things are the same at her house. Sometimes we present this rosy picture of, if you do this, then it'll be fun, and then you start doing it, and the one kid's throwing a tantrum, and it doesn't look very clean.
We were playing a game, and I can't remember, I think it was like Candyland or Monopoly, and Javi really likes to play them, and we were doing it, and I let June have her own pieces because it was just the three of us, and June, after like her second time going, then just threw everything on the board and lost all the pieces and threw everything. So it's challenging.
It's really challenging, and it's frustrating sometimes for the older kid. I showed up this morning and Javi opened the door and said, "Can you take June for a week? She's being a turd." So I think it is really a struggle when you have more than one kid and when you're trying to balance all of the other demands in life. So what things have you found that you are able to fit in that kind of work, and what things are difficult?
We now play a lot of games in the car. Like, we'll try to do rhyming words. We'll count in the car together, and we'll try to count by 2s and 5s or whatever number comes to our head. We'll also play like addition and subtraction quizzes on each other. Those are really the main things that we do. We try to look for signs that start with a certain letter or something, but that's a little harder to do while you're driving with two kids.
Yes, I think modern families, we just spend a lot of time, in the car. So I think that's awesome. So do what you can do and don't do what you can't do. I really think those conversations that you have in the car and at the grocery store and going about your daily living can help your child learn to practice their math skills. And not every conversation or every game is going to be awesome. It's more about quantity than quality. Talk about numbers daily. Play a lot of counting games so they develop their number sense. You can leave writing the numbers to the school. I don't want to leave you without any games to play this week, so here are a few more games that will help them develop their number sense. The first one is pretty simple. You just pick a type of car and count them, like how many yellow cars can we find on our way home, or how many trucks. For older kids, you can play gas station math. We are trying to teach Yogi to estimate. He likes to be very exact. One day I came home from a yoga class and he said, "Mom, you said you'd be home at 1." I said, "Yeah, and it's 12:58. "But you said 1. Anyway, estimation helps kids learn number sense. So one fun way to do this is when you stop at a gas station. You can have everyone guess how much gas you're going to get or how much it will cost. Before about 3rd grade, you'll want to tell them to ignore the numbers on the right side of the decimal. Maybe cover them up with your hand at first. Kids can look out their window and watch the numbers on the pump go up, 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 and see who guessed the closest. We do the same at the cash register at the grocery store. Preschoolers are focusing on smaller numbers, so try to do it when you know it will be a number in the range that they know, say $20, or if they're older and have moved beyond that, maybe $50. But try to keep it simple. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed meeting my friend Elizabeth, and I hope that you're learning more about what things to teach your preschooler and what things to save for the school to teach. Now, put down your phone and go play with your kid.